All right, Victorum Gaming fans and Hail Caesar fans, we're back. We're covering another faction, and today we're taking a look at the Early Assyrians. So, definitely one of the powerhouses of the Bronze Age, and really just a great army to collect. There's lots of great units in here, a lot of interesting like painting and hobby opportunities. So let's dig in here. So early Assyrian. So for this, they're basically covering 14th through 9th century BC, and again, a lot of similarities to what we've seen with a lot of these more recent armies here. Again, sort of like the Middle East, the Eastern Mediterranean, stuff like that. But there are some slight differences too. So whereas before we've seen a lot of restrictions on like how many chariots you could have, here actually chariots have to be at least 20% of your army, and infantry have to be at least a quarter. So a lot of the previous armies, basically chariots were limited up to a quarter, but here it's at least 20. So regardless of how you want to plan your army here, you're definitely going to be fielding some chariots. But as we'll see, their chariots are pretty good here. And sort of a new little wrinkle here that we've seen: cavalry, you can have up to 10%. So before, basically the last several armies we've covered, you get like one very weak cavalry unit, more like a scout unit. Here, it's actually up to 10%. And as they say here, cavalry units other than scouts didn't appear until the 9th century, but you at least will get to feel a little bit more here. Excuse me. And then, as we've seen before, pretty much standard here. So divisions, again, at least 4 units per division. Skirmishers can be up to half the infantry. Yeah, so let's jump in here. And again, the Assyrians, if you don't know their history, really cool army, very aggressive, and they definitely set up their own empire and all that fun stuff. Really cool as far as just army options here. So if you like a more maybe like a standard type army, so as opposed to a lot of these armies where we've seen like just lots of light infantry and skirmishers and stuff like that. These guys definitely offer you quite a bit of the sort of regular type units that you would expect. So you got medium infantry, you got your light infantry, and you got all kinds of chariots like we've seen before, but they definitely have some pretty neat stuff here. So we start off with the Asharuti medium infantry, and you get basically 3 different flavors of that. So you can go with mixed spears and bows and or slings. Again, solid fight values here, but the fact that you also get just really excellent ranged ability with that, all for 26 points a unit, is pretty solid. You can pay extra basically to upgrade them to elite. And what does that get you? So it doesn't change the stats, but it does give you the elite rule, and it will cost you 3 per unit. And then basically you can upgrade them to what's called armored medium infantry, and you can only do that to 1 unit, so definitely you might as well go for it. But basically that unit will have the same stats except a 4-up morale save on infantry, which we haven't seen yet. So that's actually fantastic, and they're still elite, and you will pay that extra 4 points for the unit there. So but definitely worth it. So we start off already with some really solid infantry here again. Not necessarily as good with the clash values and sustain as we saw with the new Egyptians in a previous video, but again, just having access to elite units in quantity is pretty cool. So then we move on. We have Hoopshu light infantry with a mix of javelins and bows as small units. So again, negligible on the combat side, although still a little bit better than a lot of the skirmisher units. And so you can make do in a pinch. No morale save though, so be careful there. And considering they're a small unit, you still get a decent ranged value out of it, and only 16 points a unit. Then we jump into their light infantry and skirmisher options. So you do get light infantry levies basically, and actually a surprisingly solid clash and sustain value there, 5 and 5. You do get the short range ability and basically a t-shirt save of 6 up. And again, they do have the levy rule, 17 points a unit there. Then we get our 3 skirmisher flavors, and it's basically they're all small units. The javelin unit does have a clash of 3, but don't I wouldn't take that as hey, let's get these guys into close combat. None of them have morale saves, but short range, 11 points a unit. Pretty self-explanatory there. You can go with a sling unit, which will cost you 1 more, and that'll give you that range of 2 for the long at the expense of a clash. value, but again, who cares? You really shouldn't be getting into close combat with these guys. So, for one more point, I would happily take the ability of 2 for long range. And then basically virtually the same here. Bows, so the slings, and you get 2 as well for the long range, same point value. And then here is where we get some interesting options. So Assyrians have multiple different types of chariots. And they were just, really good at what they did with these chariots. So you have, to start off with, Assyrian 2-horse light chariots with bow and javelin armed crews, 6 and 6 on the close combat, but really awesome ranged abilities, and a 4-up morale save. We've seen that pretty standard for the chariots, 30 points a unit. Then, so those are kind of like our light chariots, as they say. Then we can upgrade, basically, not necessarily upgrade, but the next in line here is the 3 or 4 horse light chariots with bow and javelin armed crews. So stats are the same, but you get stubborn, and it does cost you 3 more points. So, and again, the fact that you have to have at least 20% of your army be chariots, you can sprinkle in a mix of these light and I guess medium or heavy chariots, and just have lots and lots of mobile firepower that will deal solid range damage, and then if they get that charge off, they'll do their work too. So pretty scary stuff. And then you get the typical chariot runners. So again, we've explained those several times now across the various videos, but basically a subunit for the chariots if you want to invest those points, and just buffs the overall ability of those chariots and makes them pretty scary. And then cavalry scouts, as we've seen a lot before, bow-armed light cavalry as a small unit. You get only one of those. Again, they can do a little bit of work in combat with that 4 on the clash, really just to clean up other small skirmisher type units. And they give you a little bit of short and long range, and a t-shirt save, all that for 15 points a unit. But wait, there's more. As we saw, you can have up to 10% of your units be cavalry, and here the Assyrians definitely differ a little bit from these recent armies that we've looked at. You have 2 more cavalry units, and these don't have restrictions on them. So you have light cavalry with a mix of spears and bows, and you can see that the combat ability ticks up to a decent level here, 5 and 5, and you still get some solid ranged ability here. It's not a small unit, it's just an actual regular unit, so that's why those stats bump up. Still just a t-shirt save, but again, these are not like elite, these aren't cataphracts basically, so don't expect awesome armor saves out of these guys, and only 24 points a unit. And then our last cavalry option is actually a medium unit, so we go from scout to light to medium here. And so a medium cavalry with spears and or javelins. So that clash actually goes up to a 6, which is pretty respectable. Sustained of 5. Really great short range, but since they're just javelins, you don't get any long range. And to represent that medium, their morale save actually goes up. So this is a decent little unit, and you get more than one of these. So take advantage of that. And all that for just 1 extra point per unit. So still leadership 8 across the board here, so for commanders and the general. So yeah, Assyrians, really, really neat army. Definitely differs a lot from these lighter skirmish-based armies that we've seen a lot of recently. And again, on the modeling side, you get all kinds of cool stuff. Some really great medium infantry, the typical skirmishers that we've seen, but then just the different chariot options is really cool. The 2-horse and then the 3 and 4-horse chariots actually looks impressive on the table. And then the fact that you can really now start to bring in some cavalry, which we haven't really seen with any of the armies we've covered before. So, and having 3 flavors of that cavalry is actually just really cool. So you can really tinker with your list selection here and bring really interesting forces to bear here. And again, really cool army to collect. As far as I know, I don't think there are any plastics, unfortunately. Would be a great army to see get kind of like re-released with some plastic kits. But especially like core infantry and stuff like that, and maybe the chariots, since you're going to probably field a lot of those. But yeah, lots of neat things to collect for the army. Really cool, especially if you do some research and kind of figure out what what an Assyrian army really should look like. There's definitely some options there, and great with again sort of the armies that would have been contemporary with them. So again, you got 14th century to up through 9th century BC. There is, I think, later like a Neo-Assyrian list, which we'll cover, but for now these are like these early Assyrians. So really good stuff. So hope you enjoyed the video. Smash that like button, hit us up with a subscribe if you haven't already, and then stay tuned for more Hail Caesar content.